He doesn't fall in love when you give him your heart. He doesn't fall in love when you text him every morning or stay up all night talking. He doesn't even fall in love when you give him everything he says he wants. That's what no one tells you. Love, real love, the kind that changes a man from the inside out, doesn't happen when things are easy or convenient. It happens in a moment that rewrites everything he thought he knew about himself. That moment might come when he least expects it, when you're not trying to impress, when you're simply being you. That's when his heart stirs in a way it never has before. It's not because you're perfect. It's not because you're the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, though he may very well think that. It's because something in you feels like home, and for the first time he realizes he's tired of wandering. The male mind is wired for conquest, for strength, for independence. He's raised to believe that emotions make him weak, that vulnerability is dangerous, so he builds walls, not to keep women out, but to protect the deepest parts of himself from ever being truly seen. But here's what breaks those walls down. It's not pressure, it's not control, it's not even passion, it's presence. It's the kind of presence a woman has when she knows her worth and never needs to prove it. A man doesn't truly fall in love when everything is perfect and easy. He falls in love when he feels emotionally safe, safe enough to be vulnerable, flawed, and real. Society trains men to wear armor. From a young age, they are taught to suppress emotions, stay strong, and never show weakness. Tears are seen as a sign of failure. Silence is encouraged over expression. And somewhere along the way, they begin to believe that being fully seen is dangerous. As a result, many men walk through life emotionally guarded, even in relationship. They may desire connection, crave love, and even chase intimacy, but they don't always know how to receive it in a way that touches their soul. They fear being misunderstood, judged, or worse, rejected for who they truly are underneath the mask. So when a man finally meets a woman who offers a space of emotional safety, something extraordinary begins to happen. That space doesn't look like dramatic affection or over-the-top gestures. It's not found in constant texting or doing everything for him. Emotional safety is much deeper than that. It's when a man knows that he doesn't have to perform to be loved. It's when he can speak without being corrected, be silent without being doubted, and express his struggles without being seen as weak. This is incredibly rare for most men. They may not even realize how much they long for it until they experience it. A woman who holds that kind of space doesn't push. She doesn't try to change or fix him. She simply listens. She sees him beyond his words. She recognizes that behind the strong exterior is a soul that wants to be embraced, not for what it does. And that's when something shifts. When a man realizes that he can be fully human, imperfect, raw, and open, and still be loved, it cracks something open in him. He begins to relax. He begins to trust. He begins to show parts of himself that he's kept hidden for years. Not because he's been waiting for the right woman to pull them out, but because he finally feels like those parts are safe to be revealed. He doesn't have to filter himself or pretend anymore. He can be fully present, knowing he won't be shamed or misunderstood. This kind of emotional freedom creates a bond that is far deeper than physical attraction. It creates intimacy that is built on truth, not performance. Most women don't realize how powerful this is. They think love means doing more, giving more, sacrificing more. But the greatest gift you can give a man is the space to be himself without fear. When he feels that, it touches him in a place that's rarely been reached. He may not have the words to explain it, but his behavior will tell you everything. He'll begin to seek your presence not just for comfort, but for connection. He'll share his thoughts more freely. He'll begin to show up consistently. That's not because you want him. It's because he finally feels seen, accepted, and emotionally secure. In that space of safety, his love matures. It deepens. It roots itself in something lasting. Because while many men may be drawn to beauty, charm, or chemistry, they stay and commit when they feel safe. They fall in love when they can, let their guard down without fearing the consequences. Emotional safety is not weakness, it's strength wrapped in grace. It's what allows a man to step into love not with hesitation but with confidence. Presence is more powerful than persuasion, especially in the realm of love. There is something profoundly magnetic about a woman who is grounded in herself, who carries a calm, unshakable energy, and doesn't feel the need to convince anyone of her worth. In contrast, when someone tries too hard to be chosen, when they push, chase, or persuade, it creates pressure. It feels like an emotional transaction rather than a natural connection. Men, like anyone, are deeply intuitive when it comes to emotional energy. They can sense when someone is trying to earn their affection or win their love. That kind of energy doesn't feel like love. It feels like demand. But presence, that's something entirely different. It's silent confidence. It's the kind of calm strength that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to perform to be valued. When a woman operates from a place of presence, she doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't need to fill every silence with words or every moment with action. Her energy says enough. And that is often what captivates a man more than any well-rehearsed words or emotional tactics, because in her presence, he doesn't feel like he's being analyzed or managed. He feels free to breathe. He senses that she isn't trying to control the outcome. She's simply being fully, authentically, and unapologetically. And that kind of being is rare. It creates space for real connection to emerge, not forced by fear, but invited by calm confidence. Many women are taught that they need to keep a man interested through effort, by proving their value, by showing how loyal, loving, or supportive they can be. But the truth is, trying too hard often backfires. It creates an energy imbalance. It says, I don't believe I'm enough, so I must convince you. That insecurity, no matter how subtle, is sensed. But when a woman simply is, when she allows her energy, presence, and peace to speak before she ever opens her mouth, something deeper happens. A man starts to lean in, not because she chased him, but because her presence made him curious. Her energy felt like home. And this has nothing to do with being passive or silent. It's not about doing nothing or playing games. Presence is active, but it's internal. It's the stillness of a woman who knows she has nothing to prove. It's in the way she listens without rushing to fix. It's in the way she looks at him, not with expectation, but with openness. That energy is disarming. It tells him that she is whole on her own. And that wholeness becomes the most attractive force in the room. What presence really communicates is that love is not about performance. It's not about drama or persuasion. It's about alignment. And a woman who is aligned with herself, who doesn't betray her peace to seek validation, is irresistible. Her stillness says more than 1,000 words ever could. She isn't there to audition for love. She is the invitation to a deeper connection, one that cannot be accessed through effort alone. She shows up in her full self, and that becomes the mirror through which a man begins to see his own soul more clearly. There's something sacred in that. A man doesn't feel like he has to entertain her or be on guard. He begins to feel that he can simply be with her. That is when real love begins to form. Not from strategy, but from sincerity. It's not how much she does for him that makes him stay. It's how he feels when he's in her presence. And often, the less she tries to persuade, the more he begins to trust that what they have is real. Presence communicates what persuasion never can. Peace, self-worth, and the power of just being. Love doesn't bloom in the spotlight of grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It grows quietly in the shadows of everyday moments that seem insignificant on the surface but are deeply powerful beneath. A man falls in love not when he is overwhelmed with attention or when fireworks light up the sky, but in the calm, ordinary spaces where he feels truly seen and at ease. It's in those seemingly mundane interactions, when she hands him a cup of coffee without asking, when she listens to him without interrupting, when she simply sits beside him in silence without needing to fill it with words. These are the moments where his heart starts to feel at home. He might not even realize it at first, but something inside him begins to shift. He begins to feel safe, understood, and connected in a way that goes beyond logic. This is the difference between attraction and attachment. A man may be attracted to many, but he attaches emotionally to the woman who consistently offers peace in the ordinary. Love built on adrenaline fades, but love built on presence endures. And this presence doesn't need to be loud or obvious. In fact, it's most powerful when it's subtle. The way she remembers the little things he says, the way she looks at him without judgment when he talks about his struggles, the way she accepts his silence without trying to pull him out of it. All of this communicates a depth of care that words can't replicate. He begins to associate her with comfort. And over time, comfort becomes desire, not the shallow kind that comes and goes, but the deep-rooted kind that creates longing for her presence. These small, quiet moments are often overlooked, yet they are the glue of real love. Most people look for fireworks, but a man falls in love in the quiet glow of a steady flame. When he's with a woman who isn't trying to impress him or win him over, but who simply shares space with him as an equal, his heart opens naturally. He doesn't feel the need to be perfect. He doesn't feel like he's being evaluated. He can simply be. And that feeling is so rare that it becomes addictive. Not because she's doing anything spectacular, but because she isn't forcing anything. Love that is forced becomes exhausting. But love that flows effortlessly becomes unforgettable. Sometimes a man realizes he's in love not because of a big moment, but because of how he feels in a series of small ones. He starts noticing how his day feels incomplete without hearing her voice. He realizes he's smiling while thinking of something she once said. He feels a sense of relief when he's near her, like he doesn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. Now, these are not moments most people talk about, but they're the moments that matter. They are where trust is built and intimacy is deepened. They're where love grows its roots. A woman who understands this doesn't try to rush the process. She allows space for those small moments to build naturally. She trusts that the depth of connection will come not from doing more, but from simply being consistent in how she shows up. The truth is, most men are not looking for perfection. They're looking for peace. And when they find it in a woman's presence, not because she demands attention, but because she offers calm, that's when their heart begins to settle. That's when love becomes real, not because of a climax or a confession, but because of the invisible thread of connection that was woven one quiet moment at a time. Wholeness is one of the most powerful forces in love, and yet it's the least spoken about. A woman who is whole does not seek love to fill a void. She brings love with her. She is not asking a man to complete her, fix her, or rescue her from loneliness. She walks into the room with a quiet strength that says, I am already enough. And that energy changes everything. Men may not always be able to explain why they are drawn to certain women, but they can feel it. They can sense the difference between someone who needs them and someone who wants to share space with them from a place of abundance, not lack. When a man meets a woman who is emotionally whole, her presence becomes a refuge. She doesn't demand, she doesn't cling, she doesn't measure her worth based on his approval. She stands as her own person, and that independence becomes magnetic. So often, relationships fall apart because people enter them hoping to be saved, hoping that the other person will fix their insecurities, remove their loneliness, or give them purpose. But love built on need quickly turns into pressure, and pressure eventually becomes resentment. A man might feel flattered at first if someone clings to him for validation, but over time it drains him. He begins to feel responsible for her happiness, and that responsibility starts to feel like a weight. But when he meets a woman who doesn't carry that energy of emotional dependence, his guard comes down. She doesn't expect him to be her solution, and because of that, he is free to simply be with her, not as a rescuer, but as a partner. Wholeness means she's rooted in her own life. She has her own passions, her own purpose, her own inner compass. She isn't sitting by the phone waiting for him to call. She isn't measuring her day by his attention. She is living a full life, and that fullness invites him in, not out of desperation, but out of overflow. She becomes the kind of woman he respects, not just desires. He sees her joy, her calm, and her sense of direction, and he wants to be a part of it, not because she needs him, but because she inspires him. She mirrors what he craves for himself: balance, clarity, and peace. This doesn't mean she doesn't have emotions or never feels lonely. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means integration. It means she knows who she is even when she feels uncertain. She knows how to soothe herself. She knows how to pause before reacting. She knows that love isn't about control, but about freedom. And so she offers that same freedom to the man she's with. She allows him to be who he is. She doesn't try to shape him into her idea of a perfect partner. And that freedom becomes irresistible. A man feels safe to open up, to connect, to deepen his emotional experience because he knows she won't collapse if he pulls away or takes space. He knows she won't crumble under disappointment. She will feel the emotion, honor it, and still return to her center. That kind of emotional steadiness is rare. It's a quality that cannot be faked or forced. It comes from deep inner work, from choosing to heal rather than chase. And when a man encounters it, it challenges him in the best way. It makes him want to rise, not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. Her wholeness speaks louder than any words. It says, "I am already complete, and I invite you to walk beside me, not carry me." That invitation, made not from lack, but from fullness, is what draws in the kind of love that is steady, strong, and enduring. A man falls in love not just through his mind or heart, but through his spirit, and often it's the emotional safety a woman brings that reaches that deepest place. Emotional safety doesn't mean walking on eggshells or avoiding hard conversations. It means a man feels like he can be his raw, real self without being judged, criticized, or misunderstood. In a world that constantly demands men to be strong, stoic, and unshakable, emotional safety becomes a rare refuge. When a woman creates that space, not by fixing him, but by allowing him to feel, to process, to speak without fear, she touches a part of him that most people never reach. He begins to associate her with peace, and that association slowly turns into something far more powerful than attraction. It becomes emotional attachment, which is the foundation of lasting love. Men are often taught to suppress, to keep their feelings locked away, and to always appear like they have it all under control. But deep down, they carry wounds, fears, and insecurities just like anyone else. They long for connection, but they're often hesitant to expose their inner world because they've learned it can be used against them or make them appear weak. So when they encounter a woman who mock their vulnerability or shrink away from their emotions, but instead responds with warmth, patience, and empathy, something profound shifts inside. They begin to let go of the armor they've worn for years. They start to open. And with that opening comes trust. And with trust comes love. This kind of emotional safety isn't built through intense conversation alone. It's built in how she responds in the quiet moments. When he shares a fear and she doesn't rush to give advice, but simply listens and allows space. When he admits to a mistake and she doesn't shame him but offers grace. When he's quiet or withdrawn and she doesn't take it personally or demand instant clarity, but trusts him enough to give him space while still remaining emotionally present. These subtle responses tell him something he may have never heard with words. You are safe with me. And those 5 words, whether spoken or not, begin to rewrite his emotional blueprint. Emotional safety also means she isn't unpredictable. She doesn't explode without warning. She doesn't manipulate with silence. And she doesn't weaponize his honesty. Instead, she meets his truth with her own. That mutual transparency becomes a sacred exchange, one that deepens their bond every time they practice it. He starts to crave being around her, not because she always agrees with him or makes life easy, but because her presence feels emotionally secure. And in that security, he begins to feel more like himself. He laughs more freely. He talks more deeply. He shows up more consistently. He begins to love not just her, but who he is when he's around her. Men rarely articulate their need for emotional safety, but they respond powerfully to it. It's what makes them lower their defenses and lean in when everything else tells them to pull away. It's what allows them to stop performing and start connecting. A woman who provides this safety isn't trying to manage his feelings or be his therapist. She's simply holding space for him to exist without fear. And that act, simple as it may seem, becomes the turning point in how he sees her. She becomes his emotional home, not the place where he has to strive, but the place where he can exhale. And that is where love takes root, in the soil of emotional safety that is nurtured slowly, steadily, and with deep care. There's a powerful moment in a man's heart when he begins to realize that the woman in front of him doesn't just love him, she respects him. It's one thing to feel admired for achievements or appearance, but respect hits deeper. It affirms a man's identity, his decisions, his values, and his intentions. Respect doesn't mean agreement all the time. It means acknowledgement of his efforts, his journey, and his potential. A man falls in love when he sees in a woman's eyes not just affection, but belief. When she looks at him not as a project to fix, but as a man who is already capable, already strong, already worthy. This sense of being respected by the woman he cares about awakens something sacred in him. It inspires loyalty, it draws out commitment, it roots him emotionally in a way that attraction alone never could. A woman who respects a man doesn't belittle his opinions, even when they differ from hers. She listens to understand, not to win. When he shares his dreams, she doesn't laugh or dismiss them. She leans in with interest. When he takes a risk or steps into his purpose, she doesn't second-guess him. She stands beside him, showing that she trusts his judgment. This kind of support builds the emotional structure of a relationship. Respect becomes the foundation where love can safely grow. Without it, love begins to feel shallow or conditional, but with it, a man feels empowered in his own skin, and that empowerment naturally translates into deeper affection, care, and investment. Respect also manifests in how she speaks about him to others, when she honors him in front of friends or family, not in a dramatic way, but in subtle affirmations. He hears her pride and feels valued. When she doesn't gossip about his flaws or use his past as a weapon in arguments, he feels protected. He knows she is a safe place, not just in private but in public. This builds emotional intimacy in layers. Every time a man feels respected, his emotional connection deepens, because love for a man isn't just about emotional passion, it's also deeply tied to identity. He wants to be the kind of man his partner believes he is. Her respect becomes a mirror that reflects the best version of himself, and he begins to grow into it because of how she sees him. There's also a deep emotional connection formed when a woman honors his boundaries and decisions, even when she would have chosen differently. This doesn't mean she stays silent or hides her truth. It means she expresses her thoughts with grace and allows room for his perspective without trying to control the outcome. That space where his voice is heard and not overruled is where he feels respected and therefore emotionally safe. And emotional safety leads to openness, which leads to trust, which leads to love. A woman who walks in respect doesn't just win a man's attention, she wins his devotion. He wants to protect her, to provide for her, to build with her, not because he's being forced into a role, but because her respect calls out the honorable man inside of him. Most men don't talk openly about the need for respect, but it's embedded deeply in their emotional framework. It's how they measure their value in a relationship. A woman's respect doesn't make him perfect. It gives him space to be imperfect and still be seen as a good man. That acceptance, wrapped in admiration, becomes emotional fuel. It makes him want to show up stronger, love deeper, and commit fully. Not out of pressure, but out of inspiration. He sees in her not just someone he loves, but someone who truly sees him. And in being seen and being respected, he allows his guard to drop and his heart to open fully.